you'll see it. Create the perfect life just you will lead. Believe it, you'll see it. Set your mind on what your heart believes. Believe it, you'll see it. Create the perfect life that you will lead. Believe it, you'll see it. Set your mind on what your heart believes.
It was 6 men from Hindustan, to learning much inclined, who went down to see the elephant, though all of them were blind, that each by observation might satisfy his mind. This is the beginning stanza of a poem by John Godfrey Saxe. He wrote it in the mid-1800s, and it is about a story or a cultural teaching that had gone on in the Middle East for hundreds of years, if not more. And it's about 6 men who are blind who get taken down to see an elephant because they've never seen one before. And they all have to spread out, and they go to different parts of the elephant, and they start describing what they're seeing, what they're believing, what they're experiencing. And they say things that are very opposite. The guy who's feeling the ear is saying it's flat and thin and large like a fan. And the guy who's feeling the tail is having a very opposite experience. And the guy who's doing the tusk and is standing right next to a guy who's looking at the trunk. They're having very different experiences, and they're talking about very different things, except it's the same thing. And in the end, John Godfrey Saxe, he says, "And so these men of Hindustan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and strong, though each was partly right, and all were in the wrong." The moral: so often theologic wars, the disputants, I ween, rail on in utter ignorance of what each other means, and prate about an elephant not one of them has seen. That was his meaning for the poem. That's what he got from that story. It's evolved since then, and we take it as my experience of God is different from your experience of God, and that both of those are valid. And from there, it's evolved out to be that God is so vast and so mystical that it can't be understood by any one of us or all of us. I only share it today as a disclaimer, because this is the second talk of the year. It used to be called How It Works. The first one is the thing itself, and then the next one is how it works. And we've had our retired ministers send us, retired ministers nationwide, send us an outline for this talk that is really good. It's not the one I'm using. And so I have to apologize to them in advance and you, because I do not pretend for an instant that I understand this subject better than the retired ministers. But I will say that I do believe I understand you a little better. And I think that as we're back to basics, it is so important to get to the root of what's really going on in this thing and how we use it. So I am going to be all over the place. The more I thought, the more random the thoughts became, and eventually those random thoughts concluded in a logical answer. And I liked it, and I want to share it with you, and it's the same thing you've heard before, but presented much differently. So hang with me. You're going to hear things that are challenging. You're going to hear things that are ridiculous. And at some point, you're going to ask yourself, now, which part of the elephant is he touching? In the beginning, there was God, and that's all there was. And God created heaven and earth. I believe that part's true. Now, from there, I read the Science of Mind, the first part. And it's the thing. And Ernest uses the word the thing. And there are different theories of why he calls it the thing, because he doesn't want to call it God. He doesn't want to use any of the other names that express qualities of God, but not the entire God itself. So he called it the thing to leave it random. And so I would make this much harder than it was. I suggest to you today that the thing is called a thing because it is a thing. And Ernest called it not a thing, but the thing. And in the Bible, the word God, the Hebrew Bible that we have, the word God is many different words that appear. But in this first instant, it's the word Elohim, which is Hebrew, and it means masculine and feminine gods, plural, in one word. All these words got translated into God through the whole Bible. And so in the beginning, the gods created heaven and earth, which is to say, the gods created everything. Period. Okay, and God starts, and it seems like it started all over again. And I suggest to you that heaven and earth is everything, and it's a thing. And in biology class, I got to see a little video of a paramecium, which was a whole and complete cell. And it reproduces by splitting itself down the middle. And it separates. And on that first day of creation, before anything was, the gods separated the love and the law. And the law they vested into this thing. We see that with the human egg that's fertilized. It becomes a whole, two half cells coming together, become whole and complete. And then the first thing it does is it splits in half. And then those halves split again to where things become individualized expressions of the one thing which they always were. So this thing, like the rest of the things that are divided and separated out from the whole, has limitations. And the thing is invested with what we call the law, which is kind of a misnomer. It does not decree things. It does not decide things. The thing is different from us because it's the half of the universe that doesn't have consciousness. It can't decide if it likes you or not. It can't decide if you get this or not, if you're worthy or not. It works like it works. And there's an incredible empowering advantage of looking at the thing as a thing. On a hot summer night in 1964, southern Idaho, the first cause, that spirit, that creator of all things, was moving to and through a couple of young people in the back of a Chevy who had entered into a co-creation event. Good? Oh, was I in stereo for a little bit? Awesome. Thank you, Drew. And together, the three of them made this, and they called it Curt, and they gave it to me. And only two of them didn't realize that happened. And later they had a meeting, and they said, hey, we didn't want this. Hold on a minute. And they're like, well, the thing's talking to him and says, Well, weren't you in the co-creation event? Didn't you decide? Weren't you there? And this and your actions were certainly in alignment with the co-creation event. And they said, no, that was not our intention. We're just messing around. We weren't creating anything. And the thing said, oh, really? The thing does not know. It cannot tell what you think, what you want. It has to look at what you say and what you do. I think of God in his workshop, and I'm a man with a daughter. And so when I think of God as part of what I am, I think of God as a man with a daughter. And he's in his workshop. He's out in the garage doing whatever he's doing. And he's busy, and he's got his friends over there, and all the gods are making this thing. And they leave, and the daughter comes out, and she says, what have you guys been working on? And he says, this. And it's this big box, maybe, of nothing, and it's dark. And she says, that's nothing. That is absolutely worthless. What is this? And God says, wait a minute, watch this. Let there be light. Whoom. And there's light. And she's like, whoa. He's like, yeah, that's what it does. So the thing is voice activated. You have to talk to, oh, you know what? Our Bible tells that story. I told you I'd be all over the place. The Bible tells that story, but there's other sacred texts that have this story also. And the one I like best is the one from the Mayans, which is called the Popol Vuh. I don't know if I say that right, but nobody else does either. And in it, they tell the creation story. And in the beginning, there was blackness and there was nothing. And there was nothing that was. And the gods, and they used the plural, said, let there be light, and there was light. And then they go through all the steps of creation. And in the end, just in case we missed it, they said, and they did not do anything. They did not use anything. It was by the power of their words that all was created. And definitely everything we have seen, know, is out of that thing. And speaking into that, God created everything again and divided the waters. And I think at some point his daughter stepped up and took a turn too. Of course, I'm making that up, but that's the only way I can explain a giraffe. Or an octopus. So the thing is limited in its creation. It can create everything but one thing, and that is consciousness. The thing doesn't have consciousness. It can't be recreated. Consciousness cannot be duplicated. It cannot be produced in any way. It grows. It appears, it blossoms, it blooms. And so treating the thing like a thing, I find to be a very empowering exercise. Now, the title of this talk is called The Power of Thought. And that, in this, I think, has caused some of the confusion around what we do. And we take that as if we have a thought and we hold that in a certain way, we express it vocally in a certain way, that thing has to come into being. The better representation of what happens in this process is that, well, what happens is, what the talk should be titled, is the benefits of right thinking. The benefits of awareness. Because that is what creates our life. The word thought has so many, just enough definitions to really confuse us about what it is and what it does. And we hold the thought in our mind. It might be a memory. It might be an epiphany, or it's a new thought. But thought also means and describes our whole process of thinking. And it's that thought that we're talking about. Any one thought that you hold will be negated by your whole process of thinking, of being and realizing what you want to create. So I treat the thing like I treat my other things. My car is one of my favorite. I talk to my car. We have lots of fun together. A couple years back, I got a new car. My other car was like 22 years old. This new car, if I hook it up right, talks to me, and I can talk to it. And people hearing that might think that we're having a conversation if they didn't know better. I'm not talking to a something or somebody. I'm talking to a thing. I'm just audibly giving my input to the thing. If I go on a road trip and I end up 100 miles from where I'm supposed to be, it's not the car's fault. It can't be the car's fault. Wendy was coming home from work about a week or two ago, and down this 5-lane road, there's an apartment retail complex that has trees about every 50 feet. And they got these trees, and they're not very big trees. They're smaller than I am in circumference. And she came around, and there had been an accident that had caused the car to spin, had got in between these trees, and had wrapped itself around the tree like this. Police investigators at the scene were quick to exonerate the tree for any culpability in the accident. And that's where the story should stop. But the poor tree, who knows what his name was or is, the tree's still there, the tree's fine. Let's call him Tom. Tom's there, and the incident didn't stop. People are like, hey, you notice anything different about Tommy? Check him out. Hey, Tom, what's in your consciousness right now? He's like, trust me, I didn't have a thing to do with this. Practitioner tree is saying something you did caused this tree to come and did this car to come and wrap around you. You don't wear a car all the time. He's like, stuff just happens, and the stuff is always happening to me, is how he interprets that. Well, it's not the tree. With all the thoughts going through the thing and all of us doing our own thing, stuff happens. And what we call it, we look for meaning in that and what we want to do with that, and it doesn't always apply. Some of it is ours to do, and some of it is stuff happening. And any way we go, we are still worthy of the thing. I'm sure that car had a Google set up, and that driver could talk to Google too. And it didn't prevent the accident. We were on vacation in California, and I asked Google, it was time to do some recreational eating. And I said, Google, find an ice cream shop. And she came back and she said, there are 11 ice cream shops within a 5-mile radius. And I said with serious intent, which one is the best? I know, but it's not that ridiculous because each one of these places has a Google rating, so I figured the one with the highest rating, but I didn't say that. Google is also a thing and doesn't know which one is the best for me. I don't know, or I cannot compute, is what Google said. The closest one is here. Well, that wasn't the answer to my question. And so many times, we confuse the thing for God. God is in the thing, but the thing is not God. The thing that operates the thing is God. And so when we give the thing one request and our actions are another, it's not going to work right. If we give the thing conflicting requests, it can't work. It can't operate. And if the thing doesn't work, I don't blame myself that doesn't work. Kind of a fun exercise if you swap the content and the context, and you say some of the things about God that you say about If you substitute that word, let's say, with Google, would you ever say, Google doesn't like me? I'm not good enough for Google. I don't understand how Google works. Yeah. So it is much more empowering when we go with that approach to the thing. That we're the one in charge, where there are variables involved, we're the ones that are going to adapt so that we can use the thing for what we need the thing to work for us. And we always have to make sure that our thinking, our thought process, the way we're thinking, is in alignment with our objective. Ernest Holmes said, change your thinking and change your life. Not change your thought, change the process of your thinking. So one way to do that is to treat the thing like the thing. That is going to change your whole thought process. Another process is to move from, and this is from our ministers, is to move from the feeling of, don't say I am, but I feel. I am angry creates the anger in me both consciously and physically. Whereas if I say I feel angry, then I have a basis to explore, and I'm thinking, why is that? Have I always been that way? When did that feeling arise? What goes with that? That can change your whole thought process. Changing the thought process is vital to creating the life you want. It's this process of thinking that creates our life. And that is all confusing because we all want different things. And it's very confusing. Those guys on the elephant, when we get back to them, they're saying things. And as we move around the elephant, it starts to make sense. We're like, this is what they were talking about. This is what they meant. This is what they were trying to tell us about the elephant. The consciousness that's in us grows and expands, is growable under the right conditions. We can accept as much of God as we can see and know and accept. It is all available to us, but if I'm only open this much, I can only see this much. That's how much God there is. This knowingness of God, this understanding of God, what and who we are, creates our reality. As my growing of God expands, so does my reality. The better life you want, everything you want, comes through one thing and one thing only. And that is this, the expansion and understanding, the awareness that we call consciousness. Consciousness comes about by being open in your thinking. The thing can't give you consciousness. The gods who created the thing can't give you consciousness. You cannot give yourself consciousness. But you can create conditions where that consciousness can grow inside you. And as it does, like a plant making more space, it will stretch you this way, outward, to where you don't give up anything that you had. You have this. And so your life is determined by the level of consciousness that you attain, and we all achieve our rewards in life and our experience in life by the understanding we give to ourselves and the techniques that we pick up learning how to use the thing itself. So it's very important that we learn about levels of consciousness, what they are, where we've been, and how far we're going ahead. Lastly, I came to the poem about the blind man because I had an experience expansion of my thought. And that was this. Finally, after years and years of reading that and working with that, I realized it's not about the elephant. It's about the blind men. And the truth is, God is not so fast that it can't be seen. And God is not so mysterious that it can't be understood. I just can't see it right now. That's the only problem. And as my eyes open and awake, my consciousness expands, my understanding of the God that is and the God that I am will become equal, and I will be the Curt I was intended to be.